glad to have Connor again. Probably not going to be a really pleasant discussion, but it's one I think we need to have. We're going to discuss a little bit about what happened in Minnesota yesterday with the ICE agent who shot and killed a woman. We're going to have two different takes. And like I said, we're both going to be respectful about what we think. It's a hot button issue. Having been involved in violent incidents like this, I do understand how things escalate. And I think it's a good example of how perception by either side and what you've experienced in life has a lot to do with what you see. So without further conversation, I'm gonna let Connor kind of kick off. Just real quick, just to catch everybody up. You have an ICE agent, ICE agents doing an enforcement operation in Minnesota, Minneapolis. They're telling a woman to stop. One of them grabs her door. She ends up bumping the agent that it appears is the one that shot, bumped him on her way out, and was ultimately killed. So Connor, go ahead, give us your perspective on, if you dispute those facts, go ahead and say what you think about the facts. But the two videos that I saw, the car made contact with the agent and the agent did shoot the lady.
Yeah, so I think this is going to be an interesting one for the next couple weeks or longer. So I think we are in a position where there is a conflicting viewpoint about use of force in situations like this. But to your point, the facts as we know them are that this woman, Renee Good, was stopped blocking a street, according to the Minneapolis chief of police, I believe, between 33rd and 34th Street, essentially blocking the road. From my understanding, there was a ICE operation going on down the street. According to Christy Nome, Department of Homeland Security director, or head of the Department of Homeland Security, one of the ICE agents' vehicles had gotten stuck in the snow. We don't see that. The very difficult part about going off of bystander video right now is that the only videos I've seen have cut in once an ICE pickup truck pulls up and the officer exits the vehicle. What you see, there have been two main angles that I've seen. One kind of side on, looking almost right next to the vehicle, on the back of the vehicle, and you see in that one that she's parked across the street. There's a white SUV with its door open to the right of her vehicle, which I believe is the ICE vehicle that the officer that did the shooting was in. You see a pickup truck pull up from her driver's side and get out. They approach her vehicle. She tries to leave. When they yank on her, they grab her door. They're telling her, I guess, to get out or to stop, or that she's under arrest or something. You can't really hear clearly everything the officers say. They try and yank the door. She tries to pull away. Based on that angle, it looks like the front driver's side corner of her car may have made contact with an officer that was moving around the front of her vehicle. I would say that there's another angle from up the street that kind of looks down the street towards them. Mm-hmm. And from that angle, it looks like the officer might be a little further back and that it does not actually directly contact. But that's also the hard thing with situations like that, is you have a dark maroon car passing a dark dressed individual, so the colors blend. And so,
I think in that video, if we're talking about the same video, you can actually see the ICE agent get lifted a little bit and kind of scooted out of the way. So the impact, this is the car, it kind of impacts them and scoots them this way away from the front of the car, and then she goes. And so,
and the thing is, we don't, unfortunately, I think you and I can agree, hopefully, that neither of the videos give a great spot-on view, because in the side-on video, there's another officer in front of him that kind of obscures right as the car and he cross paths. The one down the road is far enough away, and they are both dark colors that, yeah, that absolutely, you could be 100% right, and that's what happened. I don't think I'm completely out of line to say that it could also be argued that he sidestepped out of the way, because that's kind of what it looks like from the side on video. You see as she's going to leave and turn, you see her wheels turn right, and she's trying to turn to the right to go down the street. He's standing here-ish, and she goes this way, and he sidesteps to get his angle to take his shot as she's coming here, and he goes around. So,
well, the biggest thing, and we'll talk more about exactly how it happened. The biggest complaint that I have is two-part from the left side. Number one, you have the mayor coming out and making statements that I don't know how you would look at it as, we're sitting here, we're making guesses on things. He had less video at that point than we did, and he's going to stand up there and basically say that that ICE agent murdered someone. Doesn't open up the possibility, any possibility of these dudes are just doing what they're ordered to do within the constraints of what their constitutional responsibilities are and what federal code says they are supposed to do. You obviously have, and we've talked about this before, we talked about sanctuary cities and all the problems. And this is an example of what you and I talked about, the worst of the worst. And I'm not saying that that's what they were doing in this operation, but we discussed, why isn't ICE going into areas that are not as that are hardened somewhat, and just it's not tactically expedient for them to go into those areas. And this is a classic example of what that does. And I'll break it down real quick, just from an officer standpoint.
And I'll always say, when it comes to law enforcement or military experience, I have neither. I will not ever say that I'm an expert in any way, shape, or form when it comes to those things. I will always default to you on your procedural knowledge and your in the field knowledge, because it's something I just don't have.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, from what I see is you have, I would say, obviously something that drew attention of ICE and DHS to go up there because of the immense problems that they've had, well-documented problems. We can argue, why are you doing it now for all the fraud that was going on with the Somalian population up there? You can go talk about all that, but at the end of the day, they attracted the attention of the federal government. The federal government said, there's a problem here. I think we agree. We may disagree on the way they handled it, but I think we both agree that the fraud that was going on up there and in general is not good for the country, because it's never good when you have, just from your viewpoint of the social programs that are available, when people are taking advantage of this program, people are making significant amount of money from the government, getting these grants, and they're using them for indulgence, for lack of a better way, for their own to pad their own pockets rather than deliver services. That's problematic. And so maybe we can talk about that a little bit more, but my frustration more than anything from the left is, it's fine for you to dislike President Trump, but let's not throw a civil servant. That's one of the things that was argued with the people, federal employees. Do we pick and choose what federal employees we like? Is it based on who's in power, who's not in power? Because I think about one of the things I saw posted online is the Capitol police officer that shot that unarmed female that was just pushing bodily into the chambers, and he was acquitted. And I think rightfully so. You can argue schematics, but from my standpoint, the left has used that as hey, they were doing this really bad thing. And, and you can argue, you sent me that article, in the video about what happened to the two police officers from DC, the Metro PD in Metropolitan Police Department in DC. And 100%, that was tragic. The fact that the people that, I understand that there are a lot of people scooped up that were kind of like peripherals, but at the end of the day, the people that actually grabbed the second officer that was interviewed and drug him out there and tased him and caused him all those injuries, there's no way that person should have been pardoned. 100%. If you attack a police officer, and I think that's where I'm coming from. In a civil society, law enforcement is the barrier between the criminal, in some areas, criminal element, but also restores order. And order in this case is, you got stop signs, so there's order. You have street lights, street stop lights. You have all those different things to maintain order in a civil society. Anybody that's been overseas without traffic laws will tell you it's like running an alley out there. You'll have a 3-lane road that has 6 or 7 cars, and it's just chaos. And I think that's one of the really good things about America is there is that buffer of law enforcement, but you can't pick and choose what you like about law enforcement when it doesn't fall on your side. I mean, either, hey, he's trying to do his job. She was not doing what she was told to do, which was stop the car. I understand the argument, like she was afraid, she was this, she was that, but like at the end of the day, she's committing what I believe is a criminal intent, the criminal intent to block a road to prevent. And obviously, recently we've seen officers shot at and everything else. Officers shot at. It's not.
So hold on 1 second, because I'm curious while we're right there, because you started to sort of say it, and I wanted to. This was a question I was going to ask anyway. As a active duty police officer in that situation, based off only the videos we've seen, what criminal charge do you think they would have been approaching her with, just based on the video? Because there's other factors that we don't see in the video that I think might change your answer.
I don't know what the federal code would be. Like local code would be obstruction of justice. And then it would be
so on that, because I think this is going to be a good like point for point, is what was she obstructing in that video? From what we see, what was she obstructing? She's
obstructing what they are trying to accomplish. Based on your statement, she went there to block the roadway. So it looked like
she was blocking the roadway, but based on Kristi Noem's statements, and if you look at the video of where the truck comes from, the situation that the operation that ICE was doing was down the block from her. She was up the block, blocking the road, presumably so that traffic could not get down. And I personally have not seen the video of her doing this, but it's popped up through a few sources, and you and I can both agree that early on in a situation and right off the cuff, stuff gets thrown out. So don't quote me on this one, but it sounded like what I've heard from a couple people is that she was waving traffic by to kind of, it almost sounds like she was trying to assist in, not necessarily assist ICE, but assist the community in traffic flow to stop cars from going down towards ICE while they're carrying out their operation down the block. And that, because you see that pickup truck come from down the block and pull up to her. In the one video from further up the street, you see like a little black SUV that I think had ICE in it go from down the street to her, around her, and then carry on, or from the side of the road past her, around her, and carry on. So from my understanding, she wasn't like blocking an ICE agent from getting down to what he was doing. They were already doing their thing, and she was just on the side, 100 yards up the road.
Right. Well, she's clearly in the middle of the road. She's obviously enough of a problem where you have a group of agents that are trying to remove her from there. And then when she decides she's not going to move, based on what I saw, that's when the incident happened. I think the problem in all this is law enforcement has a job, and if you disagree with the job that we're doing, either elect different people or don't do just stay out of it. I mean, that's the bottom line. The bottom line in all this is you can't introduce yourself into a violent situation, into an arrest as a civilian and expect a positive outcome, because it just doesn't happen. I understand that there are times where people want to protest things and everything else. That's what courts are for. You have civil remedies. If they do something wrong, we can be sued civilly for not doing what we were supposed to do constitutionally. All these different things are options that people have. When it gets to the point where you are interfering with lawful law enforcement operations, then you are part of the problem. And these guys, and that's, to me, that's, I don't blame that female nearly as much as they have created an environment. The mayor has furthered that environment by saying all the stuff that he said about ICE, and we don't want you here and all this other stuff. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if we're gonna apply it across the board. It doesn't matter, in my opinion, what anybody thinks. The fact is, the discussion needs to be, they are creating a hostile work environment for ICE agents and law enforcement operating in cities that say they don't want them there. But the fact is, you wanted all the different benefits from the federal government. You abuse those benefits. You have an executive branch that has decided, hey, we are going to go after this. If she had some type of gripe or anything else, that is not something you do on the side of the road in the middle of an ice.
So for that then, because this is a bit of information that has come out since yesterday that I would like to, because I think this is the spot where it would come in. We are assuming that she was there as, for lack of a better term, let's say an agitator, someone to, hey, you shouldn't be here, blah, 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 like, get out, we don't want you here, like what we've seen in videos from other cities and in past. But what's come out last night is that this woman, Renee Good, I'll say allegedly, again, information is still being confirmed, but allegedly, she was a constitutional observer, which is something that I had not heard of, but it is. I'll give you a quick definition here.
Sure.
A constitutional observer is a trained, impartial volunteer who monitors and documents interactions between law enforcement and the public, especially during protests or immigration enforcement, to ensure constitutional rights like due process and free speech are respected, informing people of their rights and connecting them with support. A distinct and direct legal advice. So I take that to be, if I'm going to apply to this.
Let's go through each one of those. Who trains these people? Yes. I mean, we're using the word of a constitutional observer. Where in the U.S. Constitution does it give the right for a person to act as a constitutional observer of this? Or is this something that's created?
So I feel like short answer, I don't know. This is just like I said, I heard last night.
And I think that's the key. The key is that I think we're in agreement that we are operating in a constitutional democracy, but on paper. You can argue different points about that, but like when we go day by day by day, we look at it and hold on.
No, you're good. You keep talking. I got this.
Okay.
I'm jumping over to a new tab.
Okay. So like from my standpoint, when I look at it, I think we have constitutional things that go on. And when they go on, we have to look at it and we have to say, okay, is this part of what has been ratified and is part of the constitutional process in the United States of America? I think when you create terms, and again, it very well could have been after George Floyd, where they were like, okay, we're going to have these constitutional observers. And then what exactly does that mean? Do they really have the legal right? Because that's where it boils down. And I feel like that's where kind of the rubber meets the road. People can toss out these really nice words, but how is it actually part of the process that the government's operated in?
So
it's no different. I'll give you an example.
On just on this while we're on it. I shared my screen with you here. So if I don't know if you paid attention to my Googling there, but first I put in what is it, constitutional observer, origins of a constitutional observer, and it took us to 1787 London. So we had to tweak that just a little bit for the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
But right, off the cuff here is from University of Michigan. The concept of a constitutional observer in the United States is rooted in the principles of the U.S. Constitution, which serves as the supreme law of the land. The Constitution's origin, tracked, blah, 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 blah. Constitutional observers are individuals who monitor the application of the Constitution and its laws within the United States. They're trained to observe and document situations where the Constitution's rights may be at risk. So what I'm going to do now is...
All right, so while you're looking...
Who trains?
Well, let's think about that. What constitutional, that constitutional observers. First of all, if you're going to be an observer, when the guy that taped everything that happened in Minnesota, like he could go in there and say, hey, this child care center wasn't open, this one wasn't open, but he documented it. So my question is, what are you doing in the middle of the road as a constitutional observer? You are actually, to me, you are making yourself part of an operation. And if you're just an observer, let's put it this way. If somebody runs on the field in an NFL football game, are they a player or are they a fan at that point? It doesn't.
No, they're a disruption because they're directly putting themselves within the field of action, so to speak.
And
I think in this situation,
let's go with that thought process. Who determines in a football game where the field of play is and the rules that are applied there?
Stadium?
No. It is the officials, the referees.
Yeah.
Okay. What are law enforcement?
Yeah, no, they're officials. But where I think that this is like you're absolutely right. And this, so I think this is where situations like this get can become so headbutting and argumentative with some folks that aren't as capable of having such lovely and thoughtful conversations as you and I do.
Right.
Is that you're not wrong. Your view is objective. Your assessment is accurate. Your knowledge of the factors that you have at your disposal, all of it is like, I'm not going to in any way say that you're wrong. What my side of the view, my personal side of the view would be is that also doesn't mean that my assessment of the situation is wrong either, because you're absolutely right that this woman is
I think
there's
definitely two sides. There's definitely two sides. I think my point in it that I struggle with the most, we can argue how back and forth about, and we can continue that, but like my biggest problem with this whole thing is, for me, is the fact that you have elected officials on the left demonizing a group of people for doing their job. And I feel like people think that they can take the law in their own hands. A classic example, and it goes back to the Trump side of it, sovereign citizens. We have those people that are like, I do not recognize the Constitution and all this other stuff.
Those people confuse the heck out of me. I don't understand
what they do is, I think people forget that it's a democracy. The majority rules, and the way you establish a majority is bring people to your side with helpful conversations, theoretically. But at the end of the day, that's my biggest problem. Let's go a little bit more into the constitutional thing about that, because like I said, my biggest thing with that, right, or my first knee-jerk reaction to that is if you're going to be an observer, you need to be an observer. You need to stay out of the field.
Well, and that's I think that's what I was going to say a second ago, where I think that's where that I guess discretion, or where, again, I'm not going to say you're wrong, but I think it's where I also am fair in my assessment, is like I look at that and say, okay, again, just based on the video we have and based on statements that have been made,
right,
to me, let's say I look, constitutional observers are typically trained by, it says, trained by, in the U.S., typically conducted by organizations, in this case, such as the Minnesota DFL, the Immigration Defense Network, and local community groups. So they are not trained by like a judicial, they don't go to 6 weeks of boot camp, or they don't take like a federal course. So that's definitely a point that will come up where it's like, okay, what type of training is it? What is the validity of her training and all that? But when I look at this situation and you say, the dude running onto the field and storming the field is interrupting the game, absolutely. In this, because we see multiple vehicles, but specifically the pickup truck, drive up to her, where my assessment of this, is that whatever operation was happening was going on down the road. So at least enough of a distance that the cops felt it necessary to get, or the ICE agents felt it necessary to move their vehicles up, not just take 2 steps to the left and confront this lady. So where I would go is like, now it's the subjective view of, was she in the situation or was she next to the situation down the road? Because to me, if she's down the road observing, 100, 200 yards away, 50 yards away, and she's not yelling at them, she's not interfering with their detainment of whoever they had, in handcuffs or what, we don't know what they were doing yet. We don't have video of that. So to me, she is not injecting herself. She is down the road. She is seemingly quiet. She's potentially blocking the street, but the argument could be made she's also blocking the street. You could say from ICE agents getting out. I could say from pedestrians and the public going down that road and getting to, she could be blocking. So,
but again, that's the playing field. The people that are conducting those operations get to set. I'm just telling you from my standpoint, dealing in environments like that, you set a perimeter. She was at the outer perimeter. They're trying to get people out of there. They have, in the past, ICE has been hit with bottles, stuff thrown at their vehicles and everything else. It's not, again, this is not all of a sudden ICE is like, hey, somebody's going to do something bad to me. We need to get out of this area after we.
And it's also, she's not sitting there saying, hey, all of a sudden, I feel it's necessary to pay attention to this one. ICE has had a track record of doing stuff too that has pushed people to feel like they need to watch when they're in the neighborhood.
What does that mean?
So to your point where, you're saying that ICE had bottles thrown at them, ICE had, and I'm not disagreeing, there have been multiple documented cases of people becoming very aggressive towards ICE agents, but there have also been instances of, there was the car in, actually it may have also been Minnesota. I don't remember where it was. No, I think it was California. I don't remember, but it was ICE agents were driving down the street and people from the sidewalk were saying, hey, get out of our neighborhood. We don't want you here. They were yelling. I won't deny that. But then the dude dropped a tear gas canister out the side of his car in a neighborhood I believe near a school or near children or civilians were around. And from the video, it looks like he's just chilling on the side with his arm up and then just pops a tear gas canister, drops out the window. There's the priest that I talked about in a previous episode that got shot in the head with a pepper bullet praying outside an ICE institution or ICE detainment center. I sent you the video of that one where, again, just based on the video, it's just a bunch of people saying, hey, we protest.
So where we're at, so we'll find a common ground. I feel like you're saying that there are instances where ICE handled the situation wrong. I'm saying that the civilian population has interrupted things that ICE was doing.
Yeah. Both sides have handled it poorly in moments. And
so from my standpoint, when I look at it, I think, yes, that is what the judicial system is for. So the priest that was shot, then he has the opportunity to go to court and see if his constitutional rights were violated by federal agents. He has all those different things he has an option of doing. Again, the problems that are had based on my experience with law enforcement and interactions with the public, the problem begins when the general public decides, okay, I'm going to use this interaction as my courtroom. And that's not what this is for. If you have an issue, it's not like you don't have a video camera. Everybody has a phone, video what happened, and then go see a judicial remedy. And I understand that, the history of our country has been the protest and different things like that. But I also think there've been some really bad things that happened as a result of those protests. January 6th is a classic example. I mean, people can split hairs and go, and depending on what side you're on, to say, well, that was it wasn't peaceful. 100% January 6th wasn't peaceful, but neither were all the George Floyd riots, the BLM riots, and everything else. My biggest complaint at this point, just based on the limited information that we have, is the fact that you have someone. I understand you're saying she was possibly blocking the street. Clearly, her car is in the middle of the street. There's parked.
No, she was blocking the street. I'm saying she was possibly.
But that is not the responsibility of civilians. It's no different than when you want to talk about chaos, go to a Walmart where everybody's parked in the fire lane. You can't, if there's a fire, you can't get a fire truck in there. Like, at what point do you say enough's enough? we establish a boundary. And I think that's what I would say to people that have a problem with the policies, immigration policies. Then go and then make the changes. There's an election coming up this year, midterm election.
Mm-hmm.
Take advantage of that. But like this stuff,
Absolutely.
The law still apply. It applies to us and law enforcement. I mean,
well, so let me hit you with two things then, as far as ICE and the law.
Okay.
And just get your feedback on them. So these are 2 points. One of them, this first one, I pulled specifically from the DOJ website. It's a section of their training manual, and it's for the use of necessary force. And so this says, I believe it's like Title I, Section 16 or something like that. But it says, firearms may not be discharged solely. Firearms may not be discharged solely to disable moving vehicles. Specifically, firearms may not be discharged at a moving vehicle unless 1, a person in the vehicle is threatening the officer or another person with deadly force by means other than the vehicle. Okay. 2, the vehicle is operated in a manner that threatens to cause death or serious physical injury, and no other objectively reasonable means of defense appear to exist, which includes moving out of the path of the vehicle. Both of those things, and this is from the DOJ training manual. Mm-hmm. So I say both. The 2 takeaways from those are deadly force may not be used if the only weapon is the vehicle. So she would have to have had a gun pointed at them or some.
No, that's not what that means. What that means, I'll give you an example of what that means is if that officer that was holding on to her door, right? Mm-hmm. And if he was not in a position to discharge his firearm because she wasn't a threat to him. Okay. Now, or if he ran to the front of the car and told her to stop, that would have been a problem.
Well, no. So it says,
I'm telling you, have worked for Department of Justice, have gone through these briefings. I'm giving you the answer of what happens. I understand what it says, but again, you're interpreting what it means. I'm telling you from actual.
Well, that's the thing is I'm not interpreting, because if you look at it, the literal words are a person in the vehicle is threatening the officer or another person with deadly force by means other than the vehicle. The vehicle is operated in a manner that threatens to cause death or serious physical injury.
It's an either or thing. It is.
It's not though.
That is what it is. Number one, it would be somebody sitting inside of a vehicle and they pull a gun and they're shot. That is the deadly force that is referred to in that first paragraph. The second paragraph is do not put yourself. Like you can't shoot a car that's going away from you. You can't, and there's constitutional precedent on all this. There's as far as the use of deadly force and how we can use deadly force. I understand, but what I'm telling you is those are 2 entirely separate. It is part of their policy, but they're 2 different things. One is I'm saying that I pull a car over, I'm standing there, they decide to take off. I can't shoot in that car unless they have a gun and some other things that are there. That's what that paragraph's saying. The next paragraph is saying, if you use the gun, if you use the vehicle, read the second paragraph.
Hold on. Part 2, the vehicle is operated in a manner that threatens to cause death or serious physical injury, and no other objectively reasonable means of defense appear to exist, which includes moving out of the path of the vehicle. So, and I'll default to you in 1 second. To me, I read that based on this situation, that they're saying that she was using this vehicle as a weapon against ICE. But if you look at the vehicle, there was look at the video, there was an unobstructed, clear path for any of the officers to take a step back and away from the vehicle to away from the driver's side and get reasonably out of the way of that vehicle. So I take that, again, no other objectively reasonable means of defense that appear to exist, which includes moving out of the path of the vehicle. To me, They had a clear, reasonable path away from the vehicle that, in firing their weapon, violated this part of this rule because it wasn't a last resort. This is telling them, if I'm reading it right, to just get out of the way. If there's a clear path to move out of the way of the vehicle, you do that rather than shoot.
Okay. So having been involved in situations like this before, two things that you look at from a law enforcement standpoint: what's on either side of her car that's in the middle of the road? Parked cars, correct?
No. If you look at if you
what I'm saying is
there's the car on the passenger side.
Listen to what I'm saying. We're not arguing schematics. The fact is there are parked cars on that street.
Yes.
Correct? There are parked cars on that because she hit a parked car. She had two parked cars.
Oh, that was way down the road though.
I understand, but there are parked cars.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I'm trying to tell you is if an officer is stuck on the side of that vehicle and is driven into those cars, that will cause death to them, correct?
But there were no cars that he would have been
driving. If you look at the video, so I agree, if an officer is coming right to left, like sitting in her car from the right front of her car to the left front of her car, right?
Mm-hmm. The officer that crosses in front of her.
Right. If she drove to the right where there are no officers, I would agree that would be a problem.
Which is what she was doing. Her wheels were turned to the right. She was pulling every indicator of that vehicle is that she was going down that path. That's when she got shot and killed and her foot hit the gas. That's the path that car went. That's why it went down that way, because it went to the right away from the officer that shot her.
I think we're talking about two different videos then, because in the video that I saw, she drives towards the officer that's at the front of her car and hits so let's just say where she was sitting, the driver's side, we'll call that the left side. Did she not drive to her left?
No, she drove to her right. Here. So let me do this. And so for anyone who's watching this or tuning in, viewer discretion advised, I'm about to show the video of the shooting. So if you don't, hopefully this is a somewhat censored version of it. I know it's New York Times. It's just the first thing that popped up when I Googled the ICE video. Okay. But let's see here. All right. So first off, as we're looking, her wheels are currently turned driver's side. If you look,
they're turned to the left, correct?
Turn to the left.
Okay.
In front of her, there are no cars parked along that far sidewalk. So the officers are approaching.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Keep going.
So officers are approaching. This first officer is grabbing the door here. Again, we don't really know. Presumably, they're saying stop, get out of the vehicle, all that. Okay. So
keep it
Minneapolis, a federal agent.
So right there. So she's backed up. Wheels turn left.
Fatally shot a motor.
Wheels are now turning right, and she is turning away from that officer as he's shooting her, or shooting at the vehicle.
No, he's up at the
30.
She is clearly pulling away to the right. There's reasonable space for them to take 2 steps back where there's no vehicles. There's nothing obstructing in front of her vehicle.
7-year-old Renee Nicole.
I think if you look at the other video, it is like she is turning into them. They're at her left. She bumps them and then goes back. I agree. She bumps and goes back to the right. But her path was left towards where the officers were.
Oh, go away, Facebook. No one likes you. Where's the... we'll just do it this way. This is going to be a great moment for Woody to cut out of just
us dead silence. No, so like I said, from my standpoint, again, it's just, and that's what a court will decide. Is the court will decide whether, because I fully expect, based on all the rhetoric and everything else, they'll probably file a criminal.
Here, we'll use your
What's that?
Fox News.
Okay.
Hold on.
But
Am
anyway,
I still screen sharing this? No, give me 1 second. So here's Fox News's report on
On that, let's bring in Carrie Urban, Fox News legal editor and former counselor to Attorney General Bill Barr. Carrie, good.
So I'm just going to fast forward through. Okay, so here's a good one. Oh, this is actually one I haven't seen
Do
yet.
that right now.
All right, so we've got her car parked. You're right. Wheels are pointed to the left. There's a white SUV, door open, presumably, and you can see her arm outside of the window waving this gray SUV by. I believe that gray car is a ICE vehicle.
okay.
Because I think from a different angle you see the headlights and it's got lights on, like red and blues on.
Okay. So it goes through.
So wheels are still pointed. You see this pickup truck pull up.
Mm-hmm.
Again, what I just saw was her wave the officers through to go around her. Which
But
again,
that's not her. That's not
it's not her responsibility. It's not her job.
But again,
so they stop.
Okay.
They get out. They're approaching. Wheels still pointed to the driver. He grabs. So I believe at this point, this SUV, the silver one, is where the officer that shot came out of. So presumably he's on the other side of her car right now.
Okay.
Yep, there he is. So he is now just popped forward.
Just for the sake of argument, there is a parked car behind them to the left, and there's a parked car to the right, and also their vehicle. But continue.
Yes, but there's nothing in front of them. There are no parked cars in front of them.
Okay.
So right there, he's already got the gun pulled. She's turning to the right.
Mm-hmm.
You can sort of see the wheels are they're at least no longer pointed left.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're pointed right. Now they're pointed right. She's turning right. He's shooting as she's turning right. And he has plenty. And again, what I'm saying is based off of their rule of reasonable way, including moving out of the way of the vehicle. There is plenty of room for both of those officers to take multiple steps back all the way to the sidewalk if they wanted to and let her go by. But she's already been shot at this point. So it's after being shot that she goes down the road and crashes because she's already dead here. Her foot's on the gas.
You see the agent who was in front of
Okay.
that vehicle.
And he's clearly not injured because I shouldn't say that. That was a misspeak. I apologize. We don't know if he's injured or anything at this time, but he's just walking down the street after her. So here, I guess, is another one. You can see the officer went around the front.
Audio on this, so just watch quiet as we watch this.
They're approaching. She puts it in reverse to get out of the way. She's trying to go to the right. That was not a great video. You didn't really see much.
It's not a fair assessment to say she was trying to get out of the way. She was trying to get away. At that point, she wasn't free to go.
Yeah, we could say she was trying to flee or she was trying to leave or whatever. But I think, at least from what I see, she is turning to the right away from the officers.
All right, so let's break it down real simple as far as I'm concerned. She was given an order by the people that controlled that scene, which were the ICE agents. Mm-hmm. They told her, this is what you need to do. And instead of doing that, she decided to do something else. It's unfortunate that she lost her life in doing so.
Yeah. And I'll say that
I think that's what the courts are for. The courts, and my biggest complaint is we can argue back and forth as far as, what time it happened, how it happened. Mm-hmm. I just would like to say from somebody that's experienced those things is there's split seconds, and a video will show you out of the way and a different angle will show. And I think the different angle was down the street where you could actually see the ICE agent get lifted. So, and if you look at where the round that impacted the windshield, it wasn't like to the side, it was straight down the side of the car, which would indicate she was driving into his path. We can argue whether he should have got out of the way, and all that. My biggest problem in its entirety for the left is they are creating an environment that is not only dangerous for the ICE agents, but I feel like they have some responsibility in the death of this woman, even to the point of, we're going to train you. Here's the problem. You have a young lady, relatively young, and you tell her you're a constitutional officer, which gives her the opinion that like, oh, well, I can tell law enforcement what they're supposed to do. I'm going to park my car in the middle of the road. And when they tell me to stop, I can drive away because I can do whatever I want to do. And that's not the case. That's not the country that we live in. You litigate, hold on, you litigate in court. You don't litigate on the side of the road. And that's the problem. Go ahead.
Well, and I think the hard thing in situations like this for anything is the recording cuts in at the time of the incident. We don't there's no one standing, at least no video has come out of the 2 minutes, 5 minutes prior to any of this. So we don't know how long she was there. We don't know what ICE was doing. We don't know how far away truly they were. So I make, that leaves the door open to people making, like me, assumptions, or I would like to say educated guesses. And it's also hard when you can't. So like the one video from the side, the lady next to the dude recording is screaming the whole time of, "What are you doing? Don't shoot her," or something. Like it was loud. So you can't hear the officers. We don't know what this woman, Renee Good, was saying. She could have been in the car saying, "Hey, you're not supposed to be here," whatever. Or she could have been in the car saying, "I'm just here to observe. I'm what." We don't have the audio. Do you know if ICE wears body cam?
I saw the report. They said they didn't. None of those agents had it.
I would say that would be the most revealing of any of it, because it would have the whole interaction of the two of them if they were body cam. But like I said, I think you are I think you are very reasonable with your assessment of the situation. I don't think there's anything necessarily that can be straight up disproven. I think while mine might be benefit of the doubt to the woman, I don't think it's necessarily completely out of the realm of possibility. But it's also, I think, to your point.
Let me ask you this, and we're talking about a civil society.
Yeah.
You have, and we talked about leaders and, trying to divide. Is it not divisive to have the leader of a city that size come out and say, before he had any real information, he had a quick look at a video, or let's say looked at a couple videos. We spent almost an hour discussing a video, but he has enough to come out there and say that this woman was murdered. What that sets up, in my opinion, is all the stuff that happens down the domino effect. The domino effect is you have riots, you have all these different things that go on because somebody who is supposed to be somebody we can trust and give trustworthy information comes out and says that these ICE agents murdered this woman, and the facts aren't in. And so to say that and to create that environment, and then again, time will tell, the information will come out. But at the end of the day, what I would ask for people to do is let's not demonize the people that are executing the policy. If you don't like the policy, elect somebody with a different policy. But at the end of the day, civil servants are doing what they have been tasked to do. There's clear code that says, and we can talk about immigration. I think we've had that on deck for a while. But
so to that point, because I think you're right. You're absolutely correct that the elected officials we have a responsibility for decorum, for keeping the peace when the citizenry is agitated. And you're right that the mayor standing up there and saying, this is bullshit.
Well, using a word that they murdered somebody without the
correct.
But
let me read this to you. The woman screaming was obviously a professional agitator, and the woman driving the car was very disorderly, obstructing, and resisting, who then violently, willfully, and viciously ran over the ICE officer, who seems to have shot her in self-defense. It's hard, based on the attached clip, it is hard to believe he is alive, but is now recovering in the hospital. That's from the president, saying that she violently ran over him and that it's surprising he's alive. If anything, if she did hit him, she bumped him. It wasn't violent. She wasn't flooring it. She wasn't trying to pin him between.
That's the problem. If you look at it, she is flooring it. You can see her wheels spinning. She was on ice.
I mean, it's ice. My wheels spin when I'm pulling away from the stop sign.
That's the one. That's one of the. it's not a funny situation, but that's one of the things that I thought, you know,
But my point is
the
like,
one
if
thing
we're
that
going to
saved the
hold,
ice, one
if
thing
we're
that
gonna
saved the ice agent was ice on the ground because her tires were spinning. So, but go ahead.
But my point is like, I don't disagree that the mayor, saying murder and calling it bullshit exacerbates the situation. But if we're going to have that, if we're going to take that stance has to apply everywhere, because it was Kristi Noem coming out and talking about a situation that she also had only seen one video on. She was saying, talking about, I forget her exact words, but they're similar, that she weaponized her vehicle and this, that, and the other, which if she's getting away, like the semantics of it are, yes, her vehicle could be used as a weapon in that situation. I disagree that she was flooring it with malicious intent to wound the officer. But when you look at a tweet from the president with the same information that all of us had, the exact same information that the mayor had, to say that this cop is surprised to be alive and that he was run over, which he wasn't. If like he was bumped, he wasn't on the ground, the car didn't go over him. By definition of running over, he was not. That's
Right.
The president exacerbating just as much, and he's notorious for doing things like that. So
Well,
that argument is like,
yeah, but
I
I
agree
think
with
the
you,
difference-
but I say I don't think it's a liberal thing. I
Oh,
think it's an across the
I
board
think
thing.
I think there's both sides, but if you take that statement at face value, I think I would agree more if he said all these agitators need to be locked up. They're this, and this. I think that would have been one thing to demonize a group. That is my issue. My issue is you're identifying one group of people and you're saying they killed, that they murdered this woman and this is bullshit. And that's not, that is not the place to be. I don't disagree. He could have picked different words and it's not an accurate representation of what happened. I will say that, like, you can take it either way. I think about the assassination attempt where they hit him in the ear and it was like, well, just hit him in his ear. Well, that's because he turned. In the same way, if that agent would have been at the front of the car, he did. I think we can agree, barring something else happened, it could have been a tragic situation for the agent where he got run over. At the end of the day, though, I err on the side of let's prevent stuff like that. And I think one of the ways to prevent stuff like that is to have, like what we were talking about before, is like, look, you have clear set rules that say don't obstruct a police officer. If you want to video something that you think is wrong and is a constitutional issue, if you're a constitutional observer, we issue press passes. If that is such a thing and that's what you want them to do, then put that on there so they're not confused with an agitator that's going to throw something at them, shoot at them, and everything else. Because that's the other thing, is it's not unreasonable for them to think they've been shot at, because I think it was in Texas where they actually shot a detainee instead of the ICE agents, but they're ripping off rounds in a detention facility. So it's not like we're operating in an environment where these guys just got up and like they were in a nice city where everybody loved them and everything was going good. They were working in a hostile environment and they reacted. So go ahead. We got about 3 or 4 minutes.
No, you're fine. No, it's you're right. Like I do think that there are, we as a nation, left, right, military, police, government, civilian, have gotten to a point of exacerbation that the dial is just baseline set to 8 on everything. People walk up to ICE and it's assumed that person is an agitator, that person is some left lunatic trying to do whatever. ICE rolls up on what could be a perfectly legal detainee or perfectly legal detention, a stop, and it's assumed that, oh, they're kidnapping an American citizen, because that's the divisiveness that we've met, or that the nature of where we are currently sitting with the atmosphere in the US. And I think there is a certain degree, in my opinion, of so for instance, I would use, like, if your daughter or son or kid is losing his shit in some situation, having a temper tantrum, it's the adult's responsibility to not go down to that level, but to mitigate that situation and be the calm center. We as citizens are the children. We react, we are emotional, especially in groups. So it is the responsibility of our elected officials, left and right, to maintain and reestablish civility. I think we have gotten to a point where that is not a thing anymore. Across the board, there are, I could easily sit here and pull 24 examples from, any of our, Trump, Kristi Noem, like any of these folks, of saying things that I could argue are exacerbating and agitating and inflaming a situation. And you could easily do the exact same with people from the left, with, AOC or potentially Newsom or some of these mayors or governors. Like, I know that we could find that, and we could make very solid arguments for those things being not helpful to the situation. But the fact I think that remains is that when we look at these situations, we have to maintain civility, but it is a higher responsibility the higher up the chain you go to maintain a level head and to not feed into that. So to me, a mayor of a town where it happened, yes, absolutely should be held to a certain degree of responsibility. But a president or a department of a federal department head are at a higher level in my book, regardless of their affiliation. I don't care if it's Trump or Biden or Obama or Bush. Your job is to be infallible. Your job is to be the parent of all the parents. And my personal opinion is Trump has not been that. He's been as much a toddler as any of us. Left, on the left as well, not saying my people are free and clear, but my view on this is one thing I will always give Obama credit for was his charisma, his ability to be an orator, and his ability to be a parent when it was needed. Like, you look at when he announced, it's a fun comparison, but it's when he announced bin Laden's death, as opposed to Trump announcing the other guy's death that I can never pronounce his name, but Abdul Bakari, I think was his name. Mm-hmm. And it's this really interesting comparison of the two. Of Obama's like, hey, we got him, we carried out this successful mission, and we have killed Osama bin Laden. Meanwhile, Trump sits there and goes, oh, we got him, we killed him like a dog, like we destroyed everyone. And so it's that aspect of, there's a certain degree of couth that has been lost in the last 10 or so years, that I think is keenly important to elected officials, and especially the higher you go.
Okay. So I'm going to wrap it up, but I do think you have excellent points as far as, decorum and things like that. I don't necessarily agree with the higher up you go, because I think as individuals, we're responsible for our own actions.
Absolutely.
And, from my standpoint, the biggest issue that I would say, and I would tell people that involve themselves on either side of the issue, is it's another human being that you're dealing with. And that's the tragedy of this. A young lady lost her life. An agent has to deal with the fallout of making that decision. There's nobody in law enforcement that's like, man, I'm really excited I got to kill somebody today.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen. And so unfortunately, people are getting spun in a blender of hate on both sides. And I just hope people will slow down, and instead of looking at somebody as a competition, they look at it as we're both American, and we're both human, and that in and of itself gives you standing to have an opinion that may or may not be like mine, but I need to slow down and listen. And so
absolutely,
I really appreciate your time, and we're going to conclude for today. Like I said, it's always good to have you on here. So.